In this edition of the Red and Blue Political Roundup, it's a tale of two stories after negotiations between the president and Democrats broke down Wednesday. The two sides met at the White House to discuss reopening the government as the partial shutdown extends into its third full week. However, Democratic leaders say it ended abruptly with the president storming out.
Again, we saw a temper tantrum because he couldn't get his way and he just walked out of the meeting.
Meanwhile, Vice President Mike Pence defended the action. He blamed Democrats instead, accusing them of refusing to compromise.
The president called the question in the meeting. He asked Speaker Pelosi that if he opened things up quickly, if he reopened the government quickly, would she be willing to agree to funding for a wall or a barrier on the southern border? And when she said no, the president said goodbye.
And the president later tweeted the meeting was a, quote, total waste of time. Let's bring in now Ginger Gibson. She is a political correspondent for Reuters. Ginger, welcome. Does this breakdown in negotiations put us back at square one? Or I feel even further than square one, because I feel at least at square one there was the possibility of negotiation.
That's right. If you go back to December 22nd, when the government shut down, they've come about as far as they were then now. President Trump has been told repeatedly that the Democrats will not fund his wall. He has insisted that it be funded. Sources were telling us ahead of the change in power in the House that Trump thought he would be in a better negotiating position once Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats took over the House. I think he has found that is not the case, and her continued insistence that it will not mean funding for a wall seems to have really frustrated him today, and that is why he left the meeting.
And Ginger, the president has tossed around the idea of declaring a national emergency to secure funding for the wall. You have reported on this. So, Ginger, what legal fight does the president risk here?
There will be a large legal fight should the president move forward with this threat, we could call it, to declare a national emergency. There is reporting again tonight that after that meeting, he's considering it as a serious option. He's going to face legal opposition on two fronts. First, whether or not there actually is a national emergency. This is something that's been used for war and attacks and hostile actors from foreign countries, not to deal with a domestic political dispute. And second, how he gets the money to pay for it, especially after Congress has clearly told him no, he can't have it. He would have to dip in to other budgets, use some rules to find that money, and would likely face opposition from House Democrats who could sue him over doing so.
Meanwhile, the standoff continues. 8 House Republicans went against the president Wednesday. They sided with the Democratic bill to reopen a handful of federal agencies, including the Treasury Department. So is the White House concerned at all that more Republicans in either chamber might break rank?
At this point, it only matters if one Republican breaks rank, and that's Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. And at this point, there's no signs of him giving up his support of the president and his insistence that any bill that gets voted on in the Senate has the support of the president. McConnell's role is pivotal here because if he wanted, he could put a bill that, if passed the House, onto the floor, would likely get enough support in the Senate to override a veto should one come. But that's not going to happen. So, yes, we see rank-and-file Republicans splintering off, but without McConnell reversing course, probably doesn't matter much to find a resolution.
So he's the key here. All right, Ginger, meanwhile, it was announced Wednesday that Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein will step down within the next month. Do we have any insight into what led to his decision?
We know that Rosenstein has said that once the confirmation of the new Attorney General Barr is made by the Senate, he is likely to leave. He then later told other news organizations that this decision would come as Mueller was submitting his final report into his investigation. We should take this as a sign that he's got confidence that Mueller is wrapping things up, that there is an end coming, and that he will be allowed to conclude his investigation without being being hampered by outside sources. This could almost be taken as a vote of confidence in the process from Rosenstein that he would step aside, leave a job that he's really had to fight to stay in, at least internally and from the White House, because he thinks his job is done.
And, Ginger, Democrats in the House Judiciary Committee Wednesday demanded that acting AG Matthew Whitaker testify by the end of the month. What does the move signal so early on in Democrats' control of the House?
This is the first shot we've seen come from House Democrats targeted at the White House, trying to say they're in power and they could force people to do things. They haven't compelled Whitaker, but they're also saying they're not going to let him run the clock out. He can't just wait until Barr has been confirmed and quietly disappear. They want him testifying about his role running this agency for the last few months.
And switching gears, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made an unannounced trip to Iraq Wednesday, part of his Middle East tour planned after the president announced last month he was ordering the withdrawal of troops from Syria. So where do we stand with all of that now? Is the withdrawal going forward?
Sources told us at the time of that announcement that it was done quickly. It was done without much consultation with high-ranking military officials, including the Pentagon chief of the time, Mattis. And we're seeing that play out. What happens when the president makes a decision that has this many implications? We saw Pompeo in the Middle East. We saw Bolton trying to deal with the issues that came in Turkey from this announcement. There's a lot of fallout. Pulling troops out, while it can be quite popular politically and seem like a simple move, is very complicated. There are a lot of ripples. We saw Republicans criticizing Obama for his decision to remove troops, and now we see the opposite. Democrats criticizing, and Republicans, President Trump for doing so.
And Mattis, of course, is no longer overseeing the removal since he's been removed from office. So, Ginger, lastly, Senator Bernie Sanders' former presidential campaign manager announced Wednesday he would not return to the post if Sanders launches a 2020 bid. What does this mean, if anything, for Sanders' prospects?
We see Bernie Sanders still continuing to weigh a possible run. He is expected to give a lot of serious consideration and possibly run in a very crowded field. We have to remember that Bernie galvanized a lot of members of his party when it was really just 3 of them running for president. Now we could have 13 or 23 running for president. I've talked to a lot of sources inside the Democratic Party, and what I'm hearing from these organizers, from these strategists, is that they were happy to back Bernie when he was the one running against Clinton, but now they may be looking for newer or younger or fresher voices in the party going somewhere else. And while they still think Bernie's great, they don't think that given this field, he's their best choice.
Yeah, he certainly started a movement, but maybe that movement has passed him by, just maybe. All right. Ginger Gibson, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you.